comfort rarely feels dangerous. It feels deserved, reasonable, even responsible. That is precisely why it often goes unquestioned. Hello, I'm Max, and if this content helps you better understand how money works in real life, I invite you to leave a like and subscribe. Here, we explore finances calmly and with perspective. Now, let's take a closer look at comfort and its hidden cost. Most people associate financial struggle with obvious problems. Low income, bad luck, or poor decisions are easy targets. Comfort, on the other hand, feels harmless. It shows up as convenience, stability, and predictability. It promises relief from friction and effort. Yet over time, comfort quietly reshapes behavior, expectations, and priorities in ways that slowly erode financial progress. The first issue with comfort is that it normalizes spending. Small upgrades become routine. Convenience fees feel justified. Subscriptions accumulate quietly. Each individual expense seems reasonable, even insignificant. The problem is not the single decision, but the pattern it creates. Comfort transforms occasional indulgence into a baseline expectation, and once expectations rise, reducing them becomes psychologically difficult. Comfort also reduces awareness. When life feels manageable, urgency fades. There is less motivation to review expenses, question habits, or optimize decisions. Bills are paid, routines continue, and everything appears stable. However, stability without intention often masks stagnation. Money flows out just as smoothly as it flows in, leaving little room for growth, flexibility, or resilience. Another subtle effect of comfort is that it discourages skill development. When systems run smoothly, there is little pressure to learn, adapt, or improve efficiency. Outsourcing effort becomes the default choice. Tasks are solved with money instead of attention. Over time, this creates dependency. The ability to adjust, reduce costs, or respond creatively weakens, making future challenges more expensive to manage. Comfort also reshapes time perception. When immediate needs are met, long-term thinking often takes a back seat. Decisions are optimized for today's ease rather than tomorrow's security. Delayed rewards lose their appeal because present comfort feels sufficient. This mindset does not cause immediate harm, but it slowly diverts resources away from long-term stability toward short-term convenience. Emotionally, comfort creates a false sense of safety. The absence of stress is interpreted as progress. Yet financial progress is not measured by how calm things feel today, but by how prepared one is for uncertainty tomorrow. Comfort can reduce anxiety in the short term while increasing vulnerability in the long term, especially when buffers and margins are quietly shrinking. Importantly, comfort does not look like irresponsibility. It looks like normal life. This is what makes it so powerful. It blends in. It aligns with social norms. It is rarely questioned because everyone around is doing the same. Over time, this shared baseline shifts upward, making higher spending feel ordinary and restraint feel unnecessary or even restrictive. The quiet danger of comfort is not excess, but erosion. Small margins disappear. Flexibility decreases. Optionality narrows. None of this happens suddenly. There is no clear warning signal. Progress simply slows, then stops, while the illusion of stability remains intact. Understanding this dynamic does not require rejecting comfort entirely. It requires recognizing its cost. Comfort should be a conscious choice, not an automatic default. When convenience is chosen intentionally, it serves life. When it is chosen unconsciously, it quietly consumes resources that could have built resilience and freedom. This is why comfort deserves examination. Not because it is wrong, but because it is powerful. Left unchecked, it shapes behavior in ways that feel harmless today but become limiting over time. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward regaining control, clarity, and long-term financial stability. Once comfort becomes the default, another quiet shift begins to take place. Decisions stop being evaluated and start being assumed. What once felt optional slowly turns into something that feels necessary. Convenience is no longer a choice, it becomes the standard. This is where comfort starts to influence financial outcomes, not through excess, but through subtle repetition. One of the most overlooked effects of comfort is how it changes spending behavior over time. Expenses rarely increase dramatically. Instead, they grow quietly, layer by layer. A small upgrade here, a recurring service there, a faster solution instead of a slower one. Each choice makes sense on its own. Together, they create a permanent increase in baseline costs. Once this baseline rises, maintaining it requires constant income and consistent stability, leaving little room for error. Comfort also reduces friction, and friction plays an important role in financial awareness. When effort is removed from decisions, attention often disappears with it. Automatic renewals, one-click purchases, and bundled services make spending seamless. Seamless spending feels efficient, but it also hides cost. Over time, money becomes abstract. It leaves accounts quietly, without triggering reflection or adjustment. Another important shift occurs in expectations. Comfort trains the mind to expect ease. Waiting becomes unacceptable. Inconvenience feels like a problem that must be solved immediately, often with money. This mindset reduces tolerance for temporary discomfort, even when discomfort could protect long-term stability. Choosing the faster, easier option becomes habitual, not intentional. Comfort also affects risk perception. When life feels stable, risk feels distant. Emergency planning feels unnecessary. Buffers seem excessive. The absence of immediate pressure creates the illusion that preparation can wait. However, stability without margin is fragile. When circumstances change, those who optimized for comfort rather than resilience often feel the impact first. Social reinforcement strengthens this pattern. Comfort-based decisions are normalized because they are shared. What everyone does feels reasonable. Spending patterns align not with long-term goals, but with collective behavior. Over time, this shared norm shifts upward. Restraint feels outdated. Simplicity feels like sacrifice, rather than strategy. Another quiet cost of comfort is the erosion of adaptability. When money consistently replaces effort, skills atrophy. Problem-solving is outsourced. Flexibility declines. This makes future adjustments more expensive, because fewer alternatives remain. The ability to scale spending down, delay gratification, or creatively adapt becomes weaker the longer comfort is left unquestioned. Emotionally, comfort reduces urgency. There is no clear signal to change. Everything appears fine. Bills are paid. Life feels manageable. Yet progress quietly slows. Financial momentum fades, replaced by maintenance. Resources are used to sustain a lifestyle, rather than to build optionality. This transition is subtle, which is why it often goes unnoticed until flexibility is already limited. Importantly, none of this implies that comfort is inherently harmful. The issue is not comfort itself, but unconscious comfort. When convenience becomes automatic, it dictates behavior without being evaluated. Money stops being directed and starts being absorbed. Over time, this absorption limits growth, not through failure, but through quiet inefficiency. Recognizing this pattern is not about creating discomfort for its own sake. It is about restoring awareness. Comfort should be chosen deliberately, in alignment with priorities, not adopted by default. When choices are examined, even small adjustments can restore balance. Awareness brings intention back into the process, allowing comfort to exist without quietly consuming progress. This is the second quiet truth. Comfort does not make people poor overnight. It makes progress invisible, margins thin, and options fewer. Understanding this dynamic creates space to realign decisions, before comfort turns from a benefit into a constraint. As comfort settles in, its influence becomes less about spending and more about direction. At this stage, financial life does not feel unstable or chaotic. It feels smooth. Bills are predictable. Routines are familiar. Nothing appears urgent. Yet this smoothness often hides a deeper issue. Progress quietly slows while maintenance takes over. One of the most subtle effects of comfort is how it reshapes ambition. When basic needs and moderate wants are consistently met, the motivation to optimize fades. There is less curiosity about alternatives, fewer questions about efficiency, and little pressure to improve systems. The focus shifts from building momentum to preserving ease. Over time, this mindset trades growth for stability, often without conscious awareness. Comfort also alters how choices are evaluated. Instead of asking whether a decision strengthens long-term flexibility, the question becomes whether it preserves convenience. Time is saved, effort is minimized, and immediate relief is prioritized. These choices feel rational, even responsible. However, when repeated, they redirect resources away from future optionality toward present ease. Progress becomes passive rather than intentional. Another important shift occurs in the relationship with time. Comfort compresses perspective. The future feels distant and abstract, while the present feels complete. Long-term planning loses emotional weight because current life already feels acceptable. As a result, actions that benefit future stability are postponed, not rejected, but delayed indefinitely. This delay quietly compounds its own cost. Comfort also affects resilience. When systems are optimized for ease, they often lack redundancy. Margins shrink because excess feels unnecessary. Buffers are minimized because emergencies feel unlikely. This creates a fragile form of stability, one that works well until conditions change. When they do, the absence of margin turns small disruptions into significant challenges. Social comparison reinforces this pattern. When everyone around appears comfortable, it becomes the baseline. Financial behavior is judged against peers rather than personal goals. Progress is measured by alignment with norms, not by improvement in flexibility or control. This external reference point quietly limits growth, because deviation feels unnecessary or even uncomfortable. Emotionally, comfort reduces tolerance for uncertainty. The desire to maintain a predictable environment can lead to overly cautious decisions that protect the present at the expense of the future. Opportunities that require temporary discomfort are avoided, not because they are risky, but because they disturb routine. Over time, this avoidance narrows options and reinforces stagnation. The cost of this pattern is not immediately visible. Life continues to function. Stress remains low, yet financial life becomes static. Money circulates within the same patterns, serving maintenance rather than expansion. The system works, but it does not evolve. This is how comfort quietly limits growth without ever appearing problematic. Recognizing this stage is crucial. It is not a failure point, but a decision point. Comfort can either become a plateau or a platform. When examined consciously, it can support growth rather than replace it. The difference lies in intention. Choices must be evaluated not only for how they feel now, but for what they enable later. This is the deeper truth of comfort. It does not destroy financial progress. It redirects it. Without awareness, that redirection leads to stagnation. With awareness, it can be adjusted. The quiet work begins not with removing comfort, but with questioning it, allowing ease to coexist with forward movement rather than quietly replacing it. At this point, the issue with comfort becomes clearer. The problem is not that comfort exists, but that it begins to operate without supervision. When comfort is no longer questioned, it slowly dictates priorities. Decisions are made to protect ease rather than to expand capability. Life feels stable, yet movement quietly slows. One of the first signs of this shift is how money starts to serve maintenance instead of progress. Resources are allocated to preserve a familiar lifestyle. Bills, conveniences, and routines are protected, while fewer resources are directed toward building flexibility. This does not feel like a mistake. It feels responsible. Yet over time, the financial system becomes closed, designed to sustain the present rather than prepare for change. Comfort also reshapes how effort is valued. When ease becomes the default, effort feels inefficient. Tasks that require time, learning, or adjustment are avoided if a paid alternative exists. This exchange seems logical, but it gradually replaces skill with dependency. The ability to adapt, reduce costs, or change direction weakens, making future decisions more expensive and less flexible. Another quiet effect appears in decision-making speed. Comfort encourages quick resolution. Waiting feels unnecessary. Friction feels like a flaw. As a result, choices are made rapidly, often without reflection. Speed replaces evaluation. Over time, this reduces the quality of decisions, not because they are reckless, but because they are unexamined. What is easiest becomes what is chosen. Financial comfort also affects risk tolerance in subtle ways. It does not necessarily increase risk-taking. In many cases, it does the opposite. The desire to protect a comfortable state leads to excessive caution. Opportunities that require temporary discomfort are dismissed. Changes that could improve long-term outcomes are delayed. The system becomes optimized for preservation rather than growth. This preservation mindset feels safe, yet it introduces fragility. A system designed only to maintain comfort has little capacity to absorb disruption. When income changes, expenses remain fixed. When circumstances shift, routines resist adjustment. What once felt stable becomes restrictive, not because resources disappeared, but because flexibility was never built. Emotionally, comfort reduces feedback. There are fewer signals to reassess behavior. Stress is low, urgency is absent, and everything appears functional. Without feedback, habits persist unchecked. Financial life becomes automatic, repeating patterns that no longer align with long-term goals. This is how comfort quietly disconnects behavior from intention. Social norms further reinforce this state. Comfort-driven choices align with what is considered normal. Spending patterns mirror those of peers. Restraint feels unnecessary, even outdated. Simplicity feels like regression rather than strategy. Over time, this normalization makes questioning comfort feel uncomfortable, reinforcing the cycle. Breaking this pattern does not require rejecting comfort. It requires reintroducing awareness. Comfort must be examined, not eliminated. Each convenience should be evaluated based on what it provides and what it costs, not just financially, but in flexibility, resilience, and future options. When comfort is chosen intentionally, it becomes a support. When it is automatic, it becomes a constraint. The quiet shift begins with small adjustments, slowing decisions, allowing mild friction, rebuilding margins, redirecting a portion of resources from maintenance to preparation. These changes are subtle, yet they restore movement. They turn comfort from a plateau into a foundation. This is where control begins to return, not through dramatic sacrifice, but through clarity. Comfort no longer dictates behavior. It becomes one factor among many. Financial life regains direction, and progress resumes quietly, steadily, and sustainably. Comfort is not the enemy of financial progress. Unexamined comfort is. When ease becomes automatic, it quietly redirects resources away from growth and toward maintenance. Over time, this reduces flexibility, limits options, and slows momentum without creating obvious problems. Real progress begins when comfort is chosen intentionally, rather than accepted by default. Small moments of friction restore awareness, discipline, and direction. Wealth is not built by rejecting comfort entirely, but by keeping it in balance. When comfort serves long-term stability instead of replacing it, financial life regains clarity, resilience, and quiet forward movement.